Good morning. Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 14th day of October 2024. In studio, I have Dan Manzo, who is the Senator of Makueni County. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Dr. Eric Komolo, an advocate. Good morning, Dr.
Good morning, sir.
Gladys Boss is the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Dan Kanokach, Advocate of the High Court. Good morning.
Good morning, Gituko.
Deputy Speaker, you've been gone for so long. Yes. We've missed you on the show.
Yes.
Where have you been?
I've not been available on Mondays because I've been more in the countryside during that time.
Okay. It's good to see you again. And of course, we had invited Gadhoni Wamushomba, but she is not available for us this morning. She will be some other time. But this morning in the papers, you'll see that despite protests, Raila now backs route to Adani deal is the main story that is on the Standard. On the Daily Nation, there's a similar story, how Adani's entry saw 56 billion shilling rise in health system cost. And you will see some of the calculations by the Daily Nation. Initial solo quote by Safaricom was 48 billion shillings. Then Safaricom Consortium quote after Adani's entry, 104 billion shillings. And the increase in the final project cost is 56 billion shillings. But Raila has defended Adani deal. The ODM chief, Raila Odinga, has defended the controversial award of lucrative government contracts to an Indian conglomerate, as former Vice President Kalonzo M accused the broad-based cabinet of perpetuating state capture. Mr. Odinga revealed that he was introduced to Adani Group by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi back when he was a chief minister in one of the regions in India. And those are the main stories on the two dailies, and that for the Adani entry into health sector management. In January this year, Safaricom offered to provide the Ministry of Health with an integrated universal healthcare system and to help implement it over 10 years at a cost of 48.3 billion shillings, including taxes. I want us to begin by listening to what Raila Odinga said yesterday in relation to this conversation. Watch.
Adani company conglomerate is worth over $200 billion. It cannot be an Adani gate. Deal with the issues as they are. If some people have made mistakes, let them own up that they made some mistakes. But do not begin to condemn innocent. We plant doubts in our capacity to handle the PPPs. We must be prepared for a prolonged period of development drought and risk being overtaken by our neighbors. Ongoing energy and airport projects therefore present a critical test that could make or break our ability to compete in the field of infrastructure development for a considerable period. I urge all agencies concerned to address all the concerns raised by Kenyans on these projects and ensure that we do not spook foreign capital away from the Kenyan economy. In the interest of protecting the principle and framework of PPPs and potential investors, we have a responsibility to ensure our processes are transparent, cost-effective, and accord equal opportunity to all would-be investors in line with the PPP Act.
All right. Well, backs the sort of makes a case for Adani, but also raises questions because he's talking about giving equal opportunity to would-be investors. But also, Kalonzo M of Wiper Party has also been speaking. Watch.
2 days ago, even with the overwhelming public resistance, the broad-based government went ahead to sign another 95 billion energy deal with the Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, KETRACO, and Adani for another 30 years. This will also not go unchallenged. We want to assure Kenyans that we will not allow our country to be auctioned by this broad-based regime. We shall fight in Parliament, we shall fight them in court, we shall fight them on the streets, but we will never surrender our country to these latter-day merchants of...
All right, Kalonzo M. I think Senator Manzo, you were there, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
What informs this take? Because yes, on Friday, I think the Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum Services Development announced that there was a 95.6 billion shilling deal between KETRACO and Adani. Your leader is saying that he's going to challenge this. At the same time, Raila Odinga is raising questions as to the PPP law, but also saying that there should be equal opportunity being availed to would-be investors. So where are we? A deal has been signed. Another one has been sort of stopped by the courts.
You see, the PPP law was done through Parliament to exclude Parliament from investigating these projects and these deals. And unfortunately, that particular law is unconstitutional. So if you're going to deal with a law which is unconstitutional, the representatives of the people of Kenya is Parliament. And therefore, if Parliament is not involved and only cabinet level passes this, like you know, Wadai is ODM, and is now the Minister for Energy. And he goes on to sign such a huge deal. It was not approved by Parliament, and therefore, we have a problem with that particular law we are relying on. It is one of those many laws which have been sneaked through Parliament, but the whole goal about such laws is to steal from the nation by certain cartels, certain individuals, enrich themselves, but leave the country poorer than it was. I still insist there must be, you know, proper investigation of these companies. They may be worth billions of dollars, but they're also in billions of dollars in debt. So they're only stealing from us. And a good example is this system which was put for health, you know, worth 104 billion. You know, you have such a system. I am very sure it's a rip-off. You have just got a few people making decisions for the nation without involving all the brains in Parliament and without involving all Kenyans through public participation. There are enough Kenyans who are more brilliant than the members of Parliament, who are experts in different regions. They can be able to make a contribution into the building of the nation. So we are just auctioning our country away, and the effects will be seen many years later.
Mheshimiwa Manzo, this law was passed in 2021. You are the National Assembly.
Yes.
So what happened? And also, what would be the role of Parliament in a procurement process?
Well, you see, Parliament, finally, even if you do procurement, once you do your investigation or there's a problem, it is Parliament which should investigate. It is, you know, Parliament should be the watchdog for the country. So the moment you do not, you know, you have a law which denies Parliament a role, or the people of Kenya a role to participate in their own activities, in their own taxes, in their own management of day-to-day lives, and then you leave it to cabinet. You see, that law takes it to cabinet. Also, cabinet then has no business in procurement. And therefore, these procurements are being conducted by who? And why is there no, you know, competitiveness? You know, it should be advertised. Different companies, including Kenyan companies, should participate. And then there must be a way of making sure that there is no fraud involved, or there are no cartels or unfair advantage to one of these organizations. But what is happening is this is just direct procurement. There's no procurement, in fact. It's direct sourcing. And it is their own place, it has its own place in law. There is every likelihood that something will go extremely wrong. We are aware that there are a lot of bribes being exchanged for these companies to get jobs here. And that is it. There's nothing much that will come out. Bribes.
How much?
In billions.
To who?
To some of these political party leaders. And that's why you find that they are able to fight for it. That's why you find strategic...
Leaders. Who are you talking about?
I am talking about Raila Odinga and William Samoei Ruto.
They have been bribed?
They have been bribed by the Adani company.
How much? Where was that arrived at?
Well, I don't want to give so much details right now. I'll do it at the right forum in the House. We'll also do
evidence that actually they received money?
There are bribes, and there are brokers involved. So that's why these companies have been given direct procurements. It's not that there are no other better companies in the world who can do a better deal.
So if the Ketraco deal is worth 95.6 billion shillings, how much is going to Raila Odinga, how much is going to William Ruto?
They know how much they received out of the deal.
Sorry?
They know how much they received. That's why Opiyo Wandayi is the Minister for Energy. That's why the CS for Energy. It is very well choreographed.
He just came in. The process started.
You know, Adani is one of the big Indian companies. And Raila Odinga has admitted that he knew these companies up to 2010 when he was Prime Minister. And it was one of the companies sponsoring his campaign so that he becomes president in 2012.
Is that so?
These are some of the companies. So it's a bigger plot.
That's a very serious allegation.
Yes, they are. And that's why there's no procurement. If everything was to be serious, everything should have been on the table. Different companies should have been allowed to compete for the same jobs. How come they are direct procurements?
Adani Group was sponsoring Azimio campaigns.
No, it wasn't Azimio those days. They sponsored the presidential campaign of Raila Odinga.
Which election?
2012.
2013.
There was a code there. There was a code movement.
Kalonzo M was the running mate.
Yeah, Kalonzo was part of the code.
It was part of it.
So
these are old. These are I don't have the exact amounts, but you know campaigns are funded by different people.
You're certain about what you're saying?
Person, you know the campaigns, the presidential campaign is owned by a lot of foreigners a lot of times. It's owned by businessmen a lot of times.
Interesting revelations. I'll get to you, Wakili, but first, Deputy Speaker, so we're hearing this, and there's that allegation that the PPP law was designed in a way to exclude Parliament. What do you have to say about that? But also, do you have any information why there appears to be direct procurement, especially when you talk about the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport expansion?
Okay, thank you, Sam. I think, first of all, let's start this way. First of all, there's only two ways that government can fund infrastructure development. Either you tax the citizens or you borrow, you get into debt. Those are the only two available avenues traditionally. Now, you will hear people like Senator Maanzo saying, no, we cannot allow you to, we don't want you to tax citizens any further. We don't want to reject the finance bill. Then, on the other hand, they say, we don't want you to borrow more. So what solution are they offering Kenyans? Because as a leader, you cannot just keep complaining and criticizing, yet you're not giving any solutions. So now, there is another avenue that many countries have used. The public-private partnerships, the PPPs. That is another avenue of funding infrastructure development or any other development within the country. That means there is a private person who has available funds and can be able to do that and recover over a period of time. So Senator Maanzo should be telling us, not saying this is bad, that is bad. Tell us what other method can we use to develop the country. And they are the same people, when they travel to Rwanda, they come back and tell us how great Rwanda is. Rwanda has gone that route because we are out of choices. And what we should say is, let us give the government of the day the opportunity to try and roll out the development that they had promised Kenyans. History will judge them. But don't preempt before they get started. Because how is it that, no, you can't tax Kenyans. No, you can't borrow more money. No, you can't do PPPs. So what do they want us to do? Sit back and let the country just slide down to economic oblivion? That cannot be a choice that you give. You must do something, at least. So, and then when he talks about, you make a lofty statement like that is direct procurement and that is single sourcing. Actually, if you look at the public procurement and disposal law, it permits, although this is not that type of procurement, but I'm just saying so that they can stop using that blanket statement, it allows single sourcing under certain circumstances. It allows direct procurement under certain circumstances, provided you satisfy those conditionalities that are provided in the law. So let us first cut out those sweeping statements that just makes the public think that you know what you're saying, when actually you're misleading the public. Then, what I would say is that, and it is not for Parliament to dictate the manner in which government rolls out its programs. What we would normally do, what would normally happen is, the government will come up with the programs that they want to undertake. They will break it down to a budget, and they will break it down to how it will be financed, how that budget will be financed through like a finance bill, for example. What then happens is it comes for Parliament for approval and the process is undertaken. So when Senator Maanzo is saying that, that Cabinet has no business procuring, Cabinet is not procuring. Cabinet is coming up with a policy in which they will roll out the program. Then that policy is sent to the line ministry for implementation. The manner in which they implement is the preserve of that particular ministry. And that program is the preserve of the executive. What we will do as Parliament is we have the Parliamentary Investments Committee, and we also have the Public Accounts Committee. If any of these programs have been done in a manner that is not within the law, that is when Parliament exercises its oversight. But now, if you say that they must just stay frozen and do nothing and let the country sink because you're suspecting that there is some bribes and that you're suspecting that there is something wrong without giving us actual concrete things that have gone wrong, it is very simple. Even Senator Manzo can move the Parliamentary Investments Committee to interrogate if any issue, if anything is outside the law or outside our constitution. So, and so we must begin to explain to Kenyans that the way our constitution is designed is that there's checks and balances. So Parliament will have its role.
Okay.
And every year, or at least even sometimes twice a year, there is an opportunity. First of all, after the program starts, there will be the public investments, there will be the Auditor General will audit. All the reports will go to the Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee will interrogate. So sometimes, let us not prematurely...
Sometimes, Deputy Speaker, it is too late after wrongs have been committed.
No, you know what?
30 years.
Yes, but then, when you're saying, the thing is, so you should preempt before any wrong happens.
I wanted to engage you
because nothing wrong has already happened.
That,
policy. You take a policy, the policy has to come to Parliament. If Cabinet passes a policy, it has to come to Parliament. In this one, there is no policy which was passed by Parliament. I was there.
On what
None.
specific
procurement? You see, like on the Adani deal
the
policy.
Deal, is it the UHC? Is it the JKI deal?
All those policies must first be approved by Parliament. There's no way you will have a policy done by Cabinet and then it doesn't come to Parliament because it is policy which informs making of a law.
Okay, can you allow me to finish because he had a chance to,
and I wanted
to speak a lot, including accusing people of bribes. And let me just say, he has accused that the Raila campaign was funded by Adani. Remember, his party, led by Kalonzo M, was in the Code Coalition with Raila Odinga. They were in the NASA coalition with Raila Odinga. So is he confirming to us that during your time, when you were both in those two coalitions, including Azimio, that you received money from Adani?
We do not belong to ODM. There is ODM.
I want you to
ODM is different from us.
So come before the House, and I would like you to accuse your coalition member in Parliament, because there's no point saying it here on television. You can raise it. You can also report to DCI.
Speaker, is it possible that presidential campaigns are sponsored by foreigners?
Companies, foreign companies.
Not to my knowledge.
Not to your knowledge.
Yes, you see, I cannot speak about things that I do not know.
Okay.
I know people have funding. I don't know where they get it. If he has information that it has come, he can actually report it. He can report it at DCI. Don't come and say it here. Because if what you're saying is worth its salt, don't come and speak about it here. So
Deputy Speaker, you are clarifying. I was
clarifying just the roles of
because
each.
You're saying that there are places where direct procurement is allowed. And
I'm saying under the Public Procurement and Disposal Act. So let us stop using...
This case doesn't apply.
This word does not...
This case doesn't apply. The Adani case does not qualify.
Sorry, Senator. In this
I don't
case,
know why Senator is not giving me a chance. Yes. So in the PPP, there is a PPP law that is passed. There is a directorate within the Treasury. There's the Public PPP Directorate, which is headed by a Director General with an entire team there.
So what we are saying is open tendering, even within PPP law.
What we're saying is, that law was set up. There is a framework that exists. We have not actually been able to use it. I think the first PPP that existed was the expressway, but the rest we haven't done it before. So right now, everyone is prematurely, through rumors, that this is wrong, something is going wrong.
Open
with it.
tender.
What I have
Open
said,
tender.
So I'm asking.
what I've said
Open
to my-
tender.
No, and that's what
Sorry,
I've said.
Senator, allow her to.
Yes, unlike Maanzo,
Yeah.
I do not speak to things that are not
That's what I'm
within my
asking.
knowledge.
Deputy
So all
Speaker.
I'm waiting for
Yes.
is this process has yet, okay, if it has begun, the documentation hasn't reached a stage where it can reach to us. We will have a chance to interrogate it. So let's not preempt programs.
Deputy Speaker, I hear you.
Hold on, let me finish, Sam. We are saying,
I'm still
let us
with you.
not
I'm not
preempt.
taking the mic away
yes,
from you.
let us not preempt programs. Let us allow programs to begin. At the time we see there is an actual problem with it, raise it, but more specifically by saying it contravenes this law, it contravenes this part of the Constitution, it contravenes this particular government policy. But right now, it is by rumor.
Okay.
They are fear-mongering to Kenyans.
Let's move away from the rumors and talk about the law. Section 37 of the Public-Private Partnerships Act talks about a contracting authority may procure a public-private partnership project under this act through direct procurement, privately initiated proposals, or competitive bidding, or restricted bidding. Raila Odinga is saying that there needs to be transparent and cost-effective procurement methods that offer equal opportunity to would-be investors. So the question I want to ask, why are we going for privately initiated proposals ahead of competitive bidding for such huge contracts?
Remember, you've just read the law, which gives you options.
Yeah.
They could have taken one option. And again, I'm saying, because facts are not within my knowledge completely, I cannot say that this is the option they have taken. And that's why anybody questioning it, should be able to say, it is contrary to the law, the provided law in this particular aspect. Let us be specific with our accusations so that we can help this country move forward. So if we find this is being done contrary to the law, then we dial back and say, let's do it correctly.
Okay.
So there's options on how to do that. And so I've not, anyone who has spoken, I've not had anyone who has been anti this giving me specifics of what has gone wrong.
All right, Deputy Speaker. Now, Wakili, talk to us, because the last time we spoke to the Cabinet Secretary for Transport now, that is Davis Churchill, the Adani JKA deal was up to the 13th stage out of 20 stages, in his own words. At that time, he said that he was not aware about the details of Ketraco deal, but he spoke about the transmission line Gilgil Thika Malai, if I remember correctly. He didn't have a figure to it, but about a month later, Opiyo Wandayi has already communicated the signing of the deal at 96 billion shillings, or 95.6 to be specific. And of course, the PPP Act is talking about some of these options that are being followed, but there are questions about the transparency. What is it that Kenyans can do and Parliament can do to at least allay the fears of these suspicions?
Just to be clear, I have some background in public-private partnerships, and it is not correct that this new major project are the first ones to be undertaken through PPP. It has happened a lot in the energy sector over the many years, back from the 80s.
Actually, Ketraco,
It's also important to appreciate that generally countries that have been progressive have tended to tap into private capital to develop projects that cannot be funded through ordinary tax measures. And I think that to the extent that we are tapping into private capital to develop infrastructure, that is a good thing. My bigger challenge is what I suspect every citizen is facing at the moment, the speed with which these 3 or so projects in healthcare, in energy, and now in the airport deal, the speed with which they have been effected, and particularly because it seems to involve one company that some people question, some others don't question. So I think that a more reasonable way to come out of this is to enhance level of public engagement. I'm surprised that our 2 friends who are members of parliament themselves are saying that they passed a law to oust their jurisdiction from auditing the projects. Whatever it is...
Well, not that, but I'll correct you.
Whatever it is, I think the right thing to be done now is to do what the Prime Minister was saying yesterday, open these things up a bit, let the public audit them, but don't, as a matter of fact, don't do away with the aspect of bringing in private capital to help develop infrastructure that we cannot finance, because we really have to remain competitive. The airport really has to be expanded, I think so. I think energy sector and healthcare sector also have to be reformed, but don't do it in a manner that I think is being done at the moment, because the consequence is obvious. Private capital does not wait for time. If you don't be transparent enough and you start litigating it, you can be sure that after 2-3 years, and this can take long in our course, after 2-3 years, these people will shift interest, because there are many other people who want these opportunities. Another thing that I think needs to be brought out is the question of jurisdiction of our courts. There is a lot of conflicting information whether our courts have jurisdiction to audit any litigation that arises from this, or whether the agreements provide for arbitration outside Kenya. And you need to know that Kenya has lost a lot of money through arbitration that is done outside the country. And so to save the public money, it's also important that as part of this auditing, we re-emphasize jurisdiction of our courts to audit projects that take place in the country. But all said and done, I think it is a good thing going forward that we are able to bring in private sector to help us develop infrastructure projects. In fact, I think from where I stand that the bigger priority should be this road from Limuru to Nakuru to Western Kenya, because you know how it gets, sometimes it gets clogged with traffic and all that, and how it can open that region going into Uganda and Central Africa. So from where I stand, the issue is level of engagement with the public.
Okay.
I am not aware about the political dynamics of funding of political parties, but I do know that generally political campaigns do attract several stakeholders who may have different motives that I think is beyond us at the moment.
Okay. And Duncan, at the same time, the campaign financing bill has never become law. There has been no, it is, but the regulations didn't. They were never effected in the last parliament. As of now, nothing is moving because, again, IBC is not in place to present such kind of regulations. But those allegations of corruption, he enumerates, and he's very confident saying it. Well, never mind that he hasn't given us any evidence. What happens to such in such a serious procurement process?
Yes, thank you, Sam. Ideally, the law is there, and the law is supposed to guide us. And it is quite unfortunate that Parliament, having enacted this particular law in the year 2021, has been at the forefront of ensuring that they actually destabilize it. The law envisages that 12 months before a general election, IBC is supposed to publish regulations which are supposed to give the maximum amount that can be contributed. Parliament has now and again, of course, frustrated that, and as such, I think the parliamentarians, and especially those who are there, should be the last ones to, cry or lay blame anywhere. But ideally, there should be a way that if Parliament fails, there should be a enacting mechanism, so that once IBC does that, because they're doing it for the general interest of the country, so that tomorrow we do not have such issues where a company has contributed, and that contribution becomes a string attached to a president-elect that he must then feel beholden, or politicians feel beholden to actually give back. And that applies across, even to governors and any elective post. But having said so, to the extent of these particular projects, they are very good projects, and I do agree with Dr. Komolo that that is actually the position. But again, the problem with these projects is that, they are laced with poison. It becomes a sandwich, a very sweet, very, very delicious when you look at it and when you put it in the mouth. But the consequences may be dire. The devil is actually in the details, and that is what we always tell people as lawyers. Devil is in those details. The problem with where we are is that, you see, even poison, a person committing suicide decides to purchase that poison and opens his own mouth and gobbles the poison. But you see, for Kenya now, we are not even given that chance. They buy the poison for you, open your mouth for you, ensure that it goes in, and you deal with the consequences. That's the problem, because the Public-Private Act, Procurement Act, it's actually very, very clear. That law is very okay, it's very good. Ideally, it enables, it tells us you have to publish this information. Public participation is at the key and the center, so that it should be the citizenry that makes that decision. Of course, it can come up as policy from cabinet. But after that, before implementing, let Kenyans decide, like Wakili here says, for him, this is a project he thinks will be crucial. Someone else will think another project is crucial. And to that extent, we can now have unanimity and decide this is better for us. And that is what happens even in county management. People are called. The governor does not just decide on these projects. They formulate them, they put them to the people. 5-year plans are always made.
Right.
So why wasn't that done in Kenya? So the question is, once it is done, and even if this law envisages private procurement,
right,
it is only, and that is for this law and even for the Public-Private Disposal Act in Kenya, Asset Disposal Act in Kenya, whereby it also envisages there can be an element of direct procurement.
Right.
But it is qualified. It is not the norm.
Right.
It is the exception. Such that there are serious qualifications that must be there. One, it must be something that is so unique that only this entity can issue. Two, it might be something that in terms of time, you don't even have the time to go through the rigors of
open
procurement.
Yep.
So to that extent, like when we had the COVID issues, it was an issue of time bound. It was a matter of life and death. But when it comes to an issue of leasing out an airport, I don't see a matter of life and death there personally. And I think it will be better, especially on the consequences. Because when you look at this, and I've heard the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Deputy Speaker, saying no one has told her what is wrong. I really wonder if that is an honest statement. Because what is wrong in this particular procurement has been shouted that even the deaf will actually tell you they've had. Because it is there in details, in very clear details. It is there, and you've just asked one question strictly, and you're not a lawyer. It offends the law, but more importantly,
which law?
In terms of
Constitution.
We will come to that. Ideally, when it comes to the actual process, you cannot have a contract whereby you host your own jurisdiction. You are selling your soul to the devil, unless you're saying you don't trust your own judiciary, because it is us. It is happening in Kenya. The locus should be Kenya. There can never be an issue.
Okay.
Two, you cannot say that when there is an issue, this particular company will be compensated regardless. You're actually tying the hands of Kenyans. That's why I'm saying we have the Office of the Attorney General, Principal Government Legal Advisor. That office must be put to account, because if there is someone who actually sanctioned these issues, then there must be accountability when it comes to that.
Right.
But the project itself is good. If that airport is actually remodeled, it is good. But when you compare, and there's something called comparative studies, as I finish, this has happened in other countries, and at what cost? And when you compare, you look at it and you say, are we getting value for our money?
All right.
The front pages show us quotations.
Yeah.
Why do we go for the highest bidder? Because in bidding, you don't go for the highest bidder. You go for the lowest, most responsive bidder. When you go for the highest bidder and you see a difference of 56 billion, a very big question mark must be put there.
All right, and we need to take a short break on the show. When we come back, we'll be diving into the conversation about what's just about to happen at the Senate, the impeachment trial, rather, of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. There's also an impeachment trial today of the governor of Kericho County. Stay tuned for that. We're back in a moment.